The satellite footage would later be analyzed frame by frame, dissected by intelligence agencies across 3 continents, and classified at the highest levels. But in that moment, as the grainy black and white image flickered across Commander Jake Morrison's monitor at 3:47 hours, all he could see was impossible geometry. 12 heat signatures, scattered across a compound that intelligence had sworn was empty. 12 signatures that had materialized in under 90 seconds, their movement patterns suggesting professional military coordination that shouldn't exist in this forgotten corner of the Syrian desert. Morrison's coffee had gone cold hours ago, but he gripped the ceramic mug anyway, knuckles white against the standard-issue Navy porcelain. The Joint Operations Center hummed with the quiet tension of controlled chaos. Dozens of analysts hunched over workstations, their faces bathed in the blue glow of tactical displays. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the reinforced walls of the USS Gerald R. Ford, the Mediterranean stretched endlessly toward a horizon that held answers no one wanted to confront. "Sir," Petty Officer Martinez's voice cut through Morrison's contemplation, "we've got movement on the eastern perimeter. Hostiles are repositioning." Morrison leaned forward, studying the thermal readings that painted their target in shades of lethal precision. The compound sat like a spider in its web, surrounded by rocky terrain that offered natural defensive positions. Intelligence had labeled it a logistics hub, weapons storage, supply coordination, nothing that required immediate action. But intelligence had been catastrophically wrong before. Timeline. Morrison's question hung in the recycled air. 47 minutes until our window closes. Weather's moving in from the northwest, and we'll lose satellite coverage. The tactical situation was deteriorating by the minute. What had begun as a routine reconnaissance mission was evolving into something far more complex. The 12 signatures weren't random. They moved with the calculated precision of a unit that knew exactly what it was doing. Worse, their positioning suggested they were expecting company. Morrison's secure phone buzzed against his hip. The caller ID made his stomach tighten. DVGRU Command. Naval Special Warfare Development Group didn't make social calls at 4 in the morning unless the world was about to shift on its axis. Morrison. "Jake, we need to talk." Admiral Rebecca Thorne's voice carried the weight of 3 decades in special operations, each word carefully measured. "About Kandahar." The name hit Morrison like a physical blow. Kandahar wasn't just a city. It was a wound that had never properly healed, a mission that had ended careers and haunted dreams for 8 years. Morrison had spent considerable effort ensuring that particular ghost stayed buried. "Ma'am, with respect, this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time, Commander. Because the solution to your current problem is sitting in the pilot's ready room, and she's been waiting for 8 years to prove everyone wrong." Lieutenant Commander Zara Phoenix Khalil adjusted her flight suit with practiced efficiency, fingers moving through the pre-flight ritual that had become as natural as breathing. The ready room aboard the USS Gerald R. Ford buzzed with the controlled energy of aviators preparing for what the briefing had euphemistically called a dynamic target engagement. Around her, her squadron mates performed their own preparations, checking gear, reviewing approach vectors, engaging in the dark humor that masked pre-mission nerves. Phoenix had earned her call sign in the furnaces of Afghanistan, where she'd brought her damaged FA-18 Super Hornet home on one engine and pure determination after taking heavy ground fire over the Kandahar province. The bird had been declared a total loss, but Phoenix had walked away with nothing more than a concussion and a reputation for being too stubborn to die. Some said it was skill, others whispered it was luck. Phoenix knew it was neither. It was the understanding that in the cockpit of a fighter jet, there was no room for anything except absolute competence. The squadron's newest pilot, Lieutenant Tommy Icebox Chen, was holding court near the coffee station, regaling anyone who'd listen with theories about their upcoming mission. 10 to 1, it's another milk run, he declared, adjusting his survival vest with the casual confidence of someone who'd never had to use it. "Intel's got us chasing shadows again." Phoenix caught the eye of Lieutenant Commander Maria Viper Rodriguez, her section leader, and one of the few pilots aboard who understood that experience was measured not in flight hours, but in the space between heartbeats when everything went wrong. Viper's subtle headshake conveyed what they both knew. Missions that started as routine reconnaissance had a way of becoming something else entirely. The tactical briefing had been deliberately vague, heavy on satellite imagery and light on actionable intelligence. A compound in the Syrian desert, elevated threat levels, rules of engagement that suggested someone expected shooting. Phoenix had seen enough operations to read between the lines of military bureaucracy. This wasn't reconnaissance. This was a rescue mission masquerading as something more palatable. Her tablet chimed with an encrypted message from DEVGRU Command. "Phoenix, stand by for priority tasking. Your expertise specifically requested. Admiral Thorne." Phoenix felt the familiar tightening in her chest that came before every significant mission. Admiral Thorne had been her commanding officer during the Kandahar incident, one of the few senior officers who'd stood by Phoenix when others had questioned her judgment. If Thorne was personally requesting her involvement, the situation was far more complex than the standard briefing suggested. The ready room's overhead speakers crackled to life. "All aviators, report to Briefing Room Alpha. Mission parameters have been updated." Phoenix stood, her movements fluid despite the weight of her gear. Around her, conversations died as 12 of the Navy's finest pilots prepared to learn why they'd been pulled from routine patrol duty in the middle of the Mediterranean night. The walk to Briefing Room Alpha felt longer than usual, each step carrying the weight of unspoken knowledge that this mission would be different. The briefing room fell silent as Admiral Thorne entered, her bearing commanding instant attention from the assembled aviators. Phoenix had served under enough senior officers to recognize the particular tension that preceded difficult conversations. The way Thorne's jaw was set, the deliberate pace of her movement to the podium, the manila folder she carried like a weapon. "Ladies and gentlemen, at 3:47 hours, we detected an anomalous situation at grid reference November 77 Delta." Thorne's voice carried the flat authority of someone delivering facts rather than opinions. What began as routine surveillance has evolved into a time-critical rescue operation. The tactical display illuminated, showing satellite imagery of a compound that looked deceptively peaceful in infrared. Phoenix studied the terrain with professional interest, noting the defensive positions, the limited approach vectors, the rocky ground that would complicate any ground-based extraction. 12 hours ago, a CIA asset went dark during a deep-cover operation. Intelligence suggests he's being held at this location, but recent thermal imaging indicates hostile forces have significantly reinforced their position. Thorne paused, letting the implications settle. "We have a 40-minute window before weather closes our operational envelope." Lieutenant Chen raised his hand. "Ma'am, what's our primary objective? Are we talking close air support for a ground extraction or direct action?" Thorne's expression didn't change, but Phoenix caught the slight hesitation that suggested the answer wasn't simple. "The asset possesses information critical to ongoing counterterrorism operations. His extraction is priority alpha." Phoenix felt the pieces clicking into place. Priority alpha meant presidential authorization, which meant whatever intelligence this asset possessed was worth risking a squadron of the Navy's most expensive aircraft. It also meant that failure wasn't an option anyone wanted to contemplate. "Lieutenant Commander Khalil will serve as mission commander for this operation," Thorne continued, and Phoenix felt 12 pairs of eyes turned toward her. Her experience with similar tactical situations makes her uniquely qualified to lead this engagement. The weight of command settled across Phoenix's shoulders like a familiar burden. She'd led combat missions before, but never with stakes this high, never with a timeline this compressed. Around the briefing room, she could see her squadron mates processing the information, some nodding with professional acceptance, others, particularly Chen, struggling to mask their surprise at her selection. "Ma'am," Chen interjected, "wouldn't Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez be the logical choice for mission lead, given her seniority as section leader?" Thorne's gaze could have frozen helium. "Lieutenant, are you questioning my tactical judgment?" "No, ma'am, You're questioning the competence of an officer who's successfully completed more high-risk extractions than anyone else in this room." Thorne's words landed like guided munitions. "Lieutenant Commander Khalil has my complete confidence, and she has yours. Questions?" The silence stretched until Phoenix stood, claiming the authority that had been placed on her shoulders whether she wanted it or not. "Flight time to target is 37 minutes. We'll brief tactical specifics en route. This is a precision operation, surgical strikes only, minimize collateral damage, extract the asset alive." She paused, meeting each pilot's eyes in turn. Anyone who can't execute that mission profile should speak now. No one spoke. The flight deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford stretched into darkness, illuminated by the choreographed chaos of night operations. Phoenix moved through her pre-flight inspection with methodical precision, each check performed exactly as she'd been trained 8 years ago at Naval Air Station Oshana. The FA-18F Super Hornet designated Phoenix 1 gleamed under the deck lights. $34 million of American aerospace engineering wrapped around twin General Electric F414 engines that could push her to Mach 1.8 when the situation demanded speed over subtlety. Her weapons systems officer, Lieutenant Jake "Ghost" Patterson, completed his own inspection on the starboard side of the aircraft. Phoenix had specifically requested Ghost for this mission, not because of his technical expertise, though that was considerable, but because of his ability to remain calm when situations deteriorated beyond the scope of standard operating procedures. In the cockpit of a two-seat Super Hornet flying at low level through hostile airspace, trust wasn't just preferable, it was essential for survival. "Looks good from back here, Phoenix," Ghost reported, his voice carrying the easy confidence of someone who'd spent 3 deployments ensuring that complicated electronic systems worked when lives depended on them. "All sensors green, countermeasures loaded, targeting pod calibrated." Phoenix nodded, continuing her visual inspection of the aircraft's external systems. The Super Hornet was armed for precision engagement, 2 AIM-120 AMRAAM air-to-air missiles for self-defense, 4 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles for surgical strikes against ground targets, and a full load of 20 ammunition for the M61A1 Vulcan cannon. It was enough firepower to level a city block, configured for the kind of precision that kept intelligence assets alive. The rest of her flight, call signs Viper, Icebox, and Raptor, were conducting their own pre-flight procedures across the deck. Each pilot moved with the practiced efficiency that came from hundreds of repetitions, muscle memory guiding hands through checks that could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. "Phoenix, this is Air Boss," the radio crackled in her headset. "Weather update from meteorology. Storm front is moving faster than predicted. Your operational window is now 34 minutes from launch." Phoenix felt the familiar tightening in her stomach that accompanied compressed timelines. 34 minutes from launch to wheels up, flight time to target, prosecution of the tactical situation, and extraction of the asset. It was achievable, but only if everything went according to plan. In Phoenix's experience, nothing ever went according to plan. "Copy, Air Boss. Phoenix flight is ready for launch sequence." The deck crew moved with practiced precision, guiding each Super Hornet toward the catapult systems that would accelerate 32 tons of aircraft from 0 to 165 miles per hour in under 3 seconds. Phoenix felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and controlled fear that preceded every catapult launch. the moment when physics took control and human reflexes became secondary to engineering mathematics. Phoenix 1, you're cleared for Cat 2. Wind down the angle, deck motion minimal. Phoenix advanced her throttles to full power, feeling 18,000 pounds of thrust pressing her back into her ejection seat. The deck crew performed their final checks, ensuring that nothing would interfere with the controlled violence of a nighttime catapult launch. Through her heads-up display, Phoenix could see the storm clouds gathering on the horizon, dark masses that would soon make precision flying impossible. The catapult shot felt like being hit by a freight train traveling at the speed of sound. One moment Phoenix was stationary on the flight deck, and the next she was climbing through the Mediterranean night sky at an angle that defied common sense. Behind her, the USS Gerald R. Ford's lights faded into the darkness, leaving only the stars and the mission ahead. Phoenix Flight, check in, she transmitted once they'd reached their cruising altitude. Viper up and good. Icebox ready to rock. Raptor systems nominal. Phoenix switched to the encrypted tactical frequency that would link them to the Joint Operations Center. Control, this is Phoenix Flight. 4 Super Hornets, 31 minutes to target, requesting final intelligence update. Commander Morrison's voice filled her headset, carrying the particular tension of someone coordinating a mission from hundreds of miles away. Phoenix, we're tracking enhanced hostile activity at the target location. 12 confirmed combatants, professional-level positioning. Be advised, this doesn't look like a routine guard detail. Phoenix felt the pieces of the tactical puzzle shifting in her mind. 12 combatants positioned with professional precision suggested this wasn't a random kidnapping. It was a deliberate trap, designed to capture and exploit a high-value intelligence asset, which meant her squadron was flying into a situation that someone had spent considerable time preparing for. Control, any indication of surface-to-air threats. Negative, Phoenix. No radar emissions detected, but maintain tactical altitude until final approach. Phoenix acknowledged and began reviewing her mental map of the target area. The compound sat in a natural bowl surrounded by rocky hills that would provide excellent concealment for hidden weapon systems. Her tactical training suggested multiple approach vectors, but the terrain limited their options to essentially one viable route, directly over the most defensible terrain the hostiles had available. Ghost, what's your assessment of our electronic warfare picture? Her WSO's voice was calm, professional. I'm not picking up any active radar signatures, but they could be running passive detection systems. These guys know we're coming. Question is whether they're equipped to do anything about it. 26 minutes to target, and Phoenix was beginning to understand why Admiral Thorne had personally requested her for this mission. This wasn't just a rescue operation. It was a test of tactical judgment under the kind of pressure that destroyed careers and haunted dreams. The Syrian desert stretched beneath Phoenix's aircraft like a moonscape sculpted from shadow and starlight. At 20,000 feet, the Super Hornet's advanced sensors painted a detailed picture of the terrain below. Rocky outcroppings that could conceal enemy positions, dried riverbeds that would channel approach vectors, and the target compound itself, sitting like a cancer in the center of carefully prepared killing fields. Phoenix, this is Control. We've got updated intelligence from satellite overwatch. Commander Morrison's voice carried new urgency. Thermal imaging shows the asset is being held in the northwest corner of the compound secondary building. But Phoenix, we're detecting what appears to be prepared defensive positions around the entire perimeter. Phoenix studied her tactical display, watching as Ghost updated their targeting information based on the new intelligence. The compound's layout was becoming clearer, a main building at the center, 3 smaller structures positioned at strategic points, and what looked like prepared fighting positions dug into the surrounding rocky terrain. Professional military planning, executed by people who understood how to defend against air attack. Control, requesting permission to conduct reconnaissance pass before engaging. Negative Phoenix. Timeline doesn't permit extended surveillance. Your window for tactical approach is 18 minutes and counting. Phoenix felt the familiar weight of command decision-making settling across her shoulders. 18 minutes to approach, identify threats, neutralize hostiles, and extract the asset alive. It was the kind of tactical problem that looked simple on paper and became exponentially more complex when measured against the reality of combat physics and human reaction times. Phoenix Flight, this is lead. We're going in fast and low, single pass to minimize exposure time. Viper and Icebox will prosecute targets on the eastern perimeter. Raptor and I will handle the northwest sector and provide overwatch for asset extraction. Phoenix, what about ground extraction? Lieutenant Chen's voice carried the nervous energy of someone processing the tactical realities of their situation. How exactly are we getting the asset out of there? The question Phoenix had been dreading. Ground extraction would require helicopter support, which would require establishing air superiority over a compound that intelligence suggested was prepared for exactly this kind of assault. But maritime helicopter assets were 90 minutes away, which put them well outside their operational window. Icebox, maintain radio discipline. Ground extraction procedures will be briefed once we establish tactical control of the target area. It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the complete truth either. Phoenix had studied enough similar operations to understand that sometimes rescue missions became recovery missions, and sometimes recovery missions became exercises in damage limitation. The asset's intelligence value was critical to national security, but 12 professional combatants in prepared positions represented a significant tactical challenge for 4 aircraft operating under severe time constraints. Phoenix, this is Ghost. I'm picking up electronic emissions from the target area. Low power, intermittent, could be communications gear, could be targeting systems. Phoenix felt her pulse quicken. Electronic emissions suggested the hostiles were coordinating their defensive efforts, which meant they were expecting air attack and had positioned themselves accordingly. Professional military training, electronic coordination, prepared defensive positions. This wasn't a random kidnapping. This was a deliberate intelligence operation designed to capture and exploit a CIA asset, which meant her squadron was flying into a carefully prepared trap. Control, this is Phoenix, requesting immediate update on hostile capabilities. What exactly are we flying into down there? Morrison's hesitation was audible across the encrypted channel. Phoenix, we're working on that assessment. Maintain current approach vector and stand by for updated targeting information. The desert landscape rushed beneath them at 480 knots. The Super Hornet's terrain following radar, painting a three-dimensional picture of the ground that would soon become their battlefield. Phoenix had flown similar missions over the mountains of Afghanistan, where intelligence assets lived or died, based on the tactical judgment of pilots who had seconds to make decisions that would echo across decades of military planning. But Afghanistan had been different. In Afghanistan, she'd had ground controllers who understood the tactical situation, intelligence that proved reliable under pressure, and rules of engagement that made sense when applied to real-world combat scenarios. This mission felt different, too much classified information, too many gaps in the intelligence picture, too many senior officers with stakes in outcomes they weren't willing to discuss. 15 minutes to target, Phoenix Flight, Morrison announced. Begin descent to tactical altitude and prepare for terminal guidance. Phoenix pushed the Super Hornet's nose down, beginning the transition from high-altitude cruise to low-level attack profile. At 500 feet above ground level, they would be exposed to small arms fire and portable surface-to-air missiles, but they would also be below most conventional radar coverage and moving too fast for effective targeting by anything except professionally operated weapons systems. The kind of weapons systems that required the sort of military training that 12 random combatants in the Syrian desert shouldn't possess. The compound appeared on Phoenix's heads-up display as a collection of geometric shapes arranged with military precision across terrain that had been carefully chosen for its defensive advantages. At 500 feet above ground level and 520 knots, the Super Hornet covered the distance between concealment and commitment in heartbeats that felt like hours. Phoenix, this is Control. Final targeting update. Asset confirmed in Northwest Building. 12 hostiles distributed around perimeter in prepared positions. You are cleared hot. Repeat, cleared hot for precision engagement. Phoenix felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that accompanied the transition from peacetime flying to combat operations. Cleared hot meant permission to engage with lethal force, permission to turn $34 million of aerospace engineering into an instrument of precisely applied violence. But it also meant responsibility for every decision, every trigger pull, every consequence that would follow from the next 60 seconds of tactical action. Phoenix flight target in sight. Viper and Icebox prosecute eastern positions. Raptor and Phoenix northwest sector. Time on target in 30 seconds. The compound rushed toward them like a movie set constructed for maximum dramatic effect. Carefully positioned buildings, defensive positions that looked like they'd been designed by military engineers, and thermal signatures that suggested the 12 combatants were exactly where intelligence had predicted they would be. Too precise, too professional, too convenient for a random kidnapping operation in the middle of nowhere. Phoenix, Ghost here. I'm detecting multiple electronic signatures from those defensive positions. These guys are using military-grade communications equipment. The tactical picture was becoming clear, and Phoenix didn't like what she was seeing. Military-grade communications meant coordination capability. Coordination capability meant disciplined fire control. Disciplined fire control meant her squadron was flying into a situation that someone had spent considerable time preparing for. Phoenix flight commence attack run, 30 seconds to weapons release. Phoenix armed her targeting systems, watching as the Super Hornet's sophisticated fire control computer calculated attack vectors, wind compensation, and target prioritization. The Northwest Building appeared in her targeting pod's crosshairs, and she could see heat signatures that suggested human activity inside the structure where the intelligence asset was supposedly being held. Phoenix, I've got the asset's location confirmed. Northwest Building, ground floor, multiple heat signatures inside. Ghost's voice was steady, professional, focused on the technical requirements of precision targeting. Recommend Hellfire engagement on eastern defensive positions first, then close air support for ground extraction. But there was no ground extraction team. Phoenix realized with cold clarity that this entire operation had been planned around the assumption that air power alone could resolve a tactical situation that would normally require coordinated ground and air operations. Someone had decided that 4 Super Hornets could accomplish what would typically require a full Special Operations Task Force. Time on target, 15 seconds. Phoenix flight, select targets and prepare for coordinated engagement. The defensive positions were clearly visible now, professionally constructed fighting positions with overlapping fields of fire, positioned to maximize defensive effectiveness against ground assault. But they were also positioned to channel attacking aircraft into predictable approach vectors, which suggested whoever had designed this compound understood how to defend against air attack. Phoenix weapons hot, engaging eastern positions. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez's voice was calm as she prosecuted her assigned targets, but Phoenix could hear the subtle tension that came with realizing that nothing about this mission was as simple as the briefing had suggested. Professional defensive positions, military-grade communications, tactical positioning that suggested advanced training. This wasn't a random kidnapping. This was something else entirely. Direct hit on eastern positions, multiple secondary explosions. Rodriguez's targeting pod was painting the tactical picture in real time. Phoenix, these guys were carrying some serious hardware. Phoenix felt the pieces of the tactical puzzle snapping into place with crystalline clarity. Secondary explosions meant munition storage, which meant the hostiles had been prepared for extended combat operations. Military-grade communications, professional defensive positioning, and enough munitions to generate secondary explosions when hit by precision-guided weapons. This wasn't a kidnapping. This was a military operation disguised as something else. And her squadron was flying into the middle of whatever it actually was. Phoenix, this is Control. Commander Morrison's voice carried new urgency across the encrypted channel. We're detecting additional heat signatures moving toward your location. Estimate 20-plus combatants approaching from the northeast. 20-plus additional combatants meant this was either the worst intelligence failure in recent military history, or someone had deliberately withheld information that could have gotten her entire squadron killed. Phoenix had seen enough operations go sideways to recognize the difference between incomplete intelligence and deliberately misleading information. Control, requesting immediate extraction of Phoenix flight. This tactical situation exceeds mission parameters. Negative. Phoenix. Asset extraction remains priority alpha. Continue mission prosecution. Phoenix felt the cold certainty that came with understanding that someone had decided her squadron was expendable if necessary to accomplish whatever this mission actually was. Priority alpha authorization came from the highest levels of government, which meant the intelligence asset possessed information that was considered worth the potential loss of 4 Super Hornets and their crews. Ghost, what's our fuel state? Enough for one more attack pass, then we need to head home. We're approaching bingo fuel for carrier recovery. The mathematics of aerial combat were unforgiving. Fuel consumption, weapons expenditure, time over target, all calculated against the immutable reality that aircraft needed enough fuel to return to their carrier or find a suitable alternate landing field. Phoenix had enough fuel for approximately 8 more minutes of combat operations before she'd be forced to break off engagement regardless of mission status. 8 minutes to extract an intelligence asset from a compound defended by what appeared to be at least 30 professionally trained combatants armed with military-grade weapons and communications equipment. 8 minutes to accomplish what would normally require a full special operations task force supported by dedicated extraction assets. Phoenix flight, this is lead. Fuel state is becoming critical. We need to extract the asset now or abort mission. The silence that followed her transmission lasted exactly long enough for Phoenix to understand that she was being asked to make a decision that would define the rest of her military career. Abort the mission and face questions about why she'd failed to extract a priority alpha asset. Continue the mission and risk the lives of her aircrew for an operation that had exceeded all reasonable tactical parameters. Phoenix, this is Control. Admiral Thorne wants to speak with you directly. Admiral Thorne's voice filled Phoenix's headset with the weight of 3 decades in naval aviation and special operations. Phoenix, I know this situation isn't what we briefed, but that asset has information about terrorist operations targeting American civilians. Without that intelligence, people are going to die. Phoenix understood the subtext. This wasn't just about extracting an intelligence asset. This was about preventing terrorist attacks that could kill hundreds of American civilians. The kind of decision that transformed routine military operations into personal moral choices with consequences that extended far beyond military careers. But it was also the kind of decision that got aircrews killed when tactical situations exceeded aircraft capabilities and pilot training. Phoenix had seen the casualty reports from operations where political necessity collided with military reality. She'd attended the funerals of aviators who'd been asked to accomplish impossible missions with inadequate resources. Admiral, with respect, we're looking at 30-plus combatants in prepared positions. This requires ground extraction support that we don't have. Phoenix, you're the most experienced combat aviator I have available. If anyone can make this work, it's you. The weight of professional trust, personal relationships, and moral obligation pressed down on Phoenix like the G-forces of a carrier catapult launch. Admiral Thorne had stood by her during the Kandahar incident when other senior officers had questioned her tactical judgment. Now Thorne was asking her to trust that judgment under circumstances that would test every skill she developed during 8 years of combat operations. Ghost, give me options for single aircraft close air support, while the rest of the flight provides overwatch. Her weapons systems officer's response was immediate, professional. Phoenix, I can put precision ordnance on target positions to suppress defensive fire, but we're going to be exposed to ground fire during our attack runs, and we still don't have a plan for ground extraction. Phoenix looked at her tactical display, studying the compound layout and the positioning of hostile forces that seemed to understand exactly how to defend against air attack. Professional military training, coordinated defensive positions, weapons that generated secondary explosions when struck by precision munitions. Whoever these combatants were, they represented the kind of tactical challenge that destroyed military careers and haunted the dreams of aviators who survived when their wingmen didn't. But somewhere in that compound, an American intelligence officer possessed information that could prevent terrorist attacks against civilian targets. Information that was worth risking for Super Hornets and their crews, worth potentially sacrificing military careers for the possibility of saving lives that would never know how close they'd come to death. The decision crystallized with the clarity that comes in the moments between heartbeats, when training and moral obligation converge into action that can't be taken back. Phoenix Flight, this is lead, we're going in. Phoenix rolled her Super Hornet into a steep diving attack that would bring her within range of small arms fire from the compound's defensive positions. At 450 knots and descending through 800 feet above ground level, the aircraft became a precision weapon system guided by 8 years of combat experience and the understanding that failure wasn't an option anyone wanted to contemplate. Ghost, target the northwest defensive positions. I need a clear approach vector to the asset building. Her weapons systems officer's hands moved across his control panel with practiced efficiency, designating target coordinates for the AGM-114 Hellfire missiles mounted beneath their aircraft. The targeting pod's infrared sensors painted a detailed picture of the compound's defenses, professionally constructed fighting positions occupied by combatants who were tracking their approach with disciplined fire control. Phoenix, I've got tone on 2 defensive positions. Recommend simultaneous engagement to minimize their reaction time. Phoenix felt the familiar weight of command decision-making compressing into the seconds between target acquisition and weapons release. The combatants in those defensive positions were human beings, regardless of their tactical intentions or political affiliations. But they were also armed combatants holding an American intelligence officer whose information could save civilian lives. Phoenix Flight, this is lead, engaging defensive positions northwest sector. The Hellfire missiles separated from their mounting points with the precision of Swiss clockwork, their guidance systems locked onto target coordinates that would deliver 20 pounds of high-explosive warheads with accuracy measured in inches rather than feet. Phoenix watched the missile telemetry on her heads-up display, tracking the weapon's flight path toward targets that would cease to exist in approximately 8 seconds. Direct hits, northwest positions neutralized. Ghost's voice carried professional satisfaction. Phoenix, I'm seeing secondary explosions from both positions. These guys were definitely carrying heavy weapons. The tactical picture was becoming clearer with each successful engagement. Secondary explosions confirmed that the defensive positions had been stocked with military-grade weapons and ammunition, which meant the combatants had been prepared for sustained combat operations rather than simple guard duty. Professional military planning, executed by people who understood modern warfare tactics and equipment requirements. Phoenix, this is Viper. We've neutralized the eastern defensive positions, but I'm seeing movement from additional combatants approaching from the northeast. Estimate 15 to 20 personnel, armed and moving with tactical coordination. Phoenix felt her pulse quicken. 15 to 20 additional combatants meant the hostile force was significantly larger than intelligence had suggested, and their movement patterns indicated military training rather than improvised defensive reactions. Someone had positioned a substantial force around this compound, equipped and trained them for combat operations, and coordinated their defensive response to air attack. Control, this is Phoenix. We're engaging a force that significantly exceeds intelligence estimates, requesting immediate support from available assets. Commander Morrison's response carried the tension of someone coordinating multiple crisis situations simultaneously. Phoenix, no additional support is available within your operational window. Weather is degrading rapidly, and you're approaching bingo fuel for carrier recovery. The mathematics of aerial warfare were becoming critical. Phoenix had enough fuel for approximately 6 more minutes of combat operations before she'd be forced to break off engagement regardless of mission status. 6 minutes to suppress hostile fire, locate and extract the intelligence asset, and provide cover for whatever extraction method they could improvise with available resources. Ghost, what are our options for close air support while maintaining enough fuel for carrier recovery? Her WSO's calculations were immediate and sobering. Phoenix, we can make one more attack pass with remaining ordnance, then we need to head home. We're already cutting our fuel margins closer than I'd prefer. Phoenix studied her tactical display, watching thermal signatures that represented hostile combatants moving with coordination that suggested professional military training. The intelligence asset was somewhere in the northwest building, surrounded by an unknown number of guards, while at least 20 additional combatants positioned themselves to repel rescue attempts. Phoenix Flight, this is Lead. I'm going to attempt direct extraction of the asset, maintain overwatch and engage targets of opportunity. The plan that formed in Phoenix's mind violated several principles of tactical aviation and most concepts of reasonable risk management. But it was also the only option that offered any possibility of extracting the intelligence asset within their operational constraints. Phoenix brought her Super Hornet down to 200 feet above ground level, flying directly over the compound at a speed that would give hostile combatants approximately 2 seconds to acquire and engage her aircraft. At that altitude and airspeed, small arms fire became a significant threat, and any portable surface-to-air missile would be impossible to evade. But it would also position her to provide direct fire support for whatever extraction method they could improvise in the next 4 minutes. Phoenix, I'm detecting multiple heat signatures inside the northwest building. Ghost's voice was steady despite the tactical insanity of their current approach. Looks like 3 to 4 individuals, one of which matches the profile for our intelligence asset. Phoenix armed her 20 cannon, preparing to provide suppressive fire that would allow close approach to the target building. The M61, a 1 Vulcan cannon, could fire 6,000 rounds per minute with accuracy sufficient to place individual rounds within inches of designated targets, but using it at this altitude would expose them to return fire from every hostile combatant within effective range. Ghost, can you identify the asset's specific location within the building? Phoenix, thermal imaging shows one individual separated from the others, northwestern corner of the structure. Appears to be restrained or incapacitated. The tactical picture crystallized with absolute clarity. The intelligence asset was being held in the northwestern corner of the building, separated from 3 to 4 guards who were positioned to prevent exactly the kind of rescue attempt Phoenix was considering. Professional captivity management, executed by people who understood counterintelligence operations and hostage rescue tactics, which meant her improvised extraction attempt was flying into a situation that someone had spent considerable time preparing to defend against. Phoenix, this is Control. Intelligence update. Weather window is closing faster than predicted. You have 3 minutes before conditions become unsuitable for carrier recovery. 3 minutes to extract an intelligence asset from professional captivity, neutralize multiple hostile combatants, and escape from a tactical situation that had already exceeded all reasonable operational parameters. 3 minutes to accomplish what should require a full special operations task force with dedicated extraction assets and unlimited time for tactical planning. Phoenix felt the cold certainty that comes with understanding that some decisions transform routine military operations into personal tests of character and professional competence. Admiral Thorne had personally requested her for this mission because she demonstrated the ability to bring damaged aircraft home through hostile airspace. Now she was being asked to demonstrate whether that same combination of skill and determination could extract American intelligence personnel from professionally managed captivity. Phoenix Flight, this is Lead. I'm beginning final approach to the target building. Maintain overwatch and be prepared for immediate extraction. Phoenix brought her Super Hornet into a final approach that would expose her aircraft to ground fire from every remaining hostile position around the compound. At 150 feet above ground level and 380 knots, she would have approximately 1 second to identify targets, engage with precision fire, and avoid return fire that could bring down 30,